everyone has heard of the 10 Commandments, the list of thou shalt nots found in the Bible. Jesus saw in these commandments not onerous burdens, but guardrails and guideposts designed to help us experience the good and beautiful life. Words that set safe boundaries, create order out of chaos, help communities live peacefully, and protect us, often from ourselves. Every thou shalt not was intended to point to a life-giving thou shalt. These ancient words were given by a loving God who longed to protect us from harm while pointing toward the keys to a deeply meaningful and joyful life. Join us as we read the 10 Commandments through the eyes of Jesus.
When I first started showing up at Asbury United Methodist Church, everybody wanted to meet in the kitchen. And I was like, why do we keep meeting in the kitchen? I mean, there's like a really comfortable conference room across that has padded seats in it, or there's the fellowship hall just on the other side that's nice and wide open. But no, everybody wanted to meet in the kitchen. This was such a strange and awkward place. I mean, there's so many other comfortable places to meet. And I don't think that I fully grasped or understood the importance of that space until I talked to Pastor Jeff Hayes. Now, as you heard earlier, this was his first solo pastorate back in the 70s and 80s. He came here at 30 years old with little kids. And he told me that in 1980, that there was this group that met in that kitchen. It was the Christian Family Forum. And this group included people like Leroy Henry and Jim and Mary McCartney and the Kesslers and Joyce and Jerry Hoke, among many others. And they decided to meet in this kitchen space, this unusual space, to allow the young adults in the church. There were about 8 to 10 couples and families, the Hobies, the Smiths, the Scovilles, and more, for that group to have the more comfortable spaces in the building. It was actually an act of hospitality for the Family Christian Forum to meet in the kitchen. It's the way that like mom and dad take the uncomfortable spots so that the kids have the comfortable spot. But there was one week in particular where the Christian Family Forum was rocked to the core. You see, Jeff Hayes told me that Henry's son died in an accident out west, and Marge Chapman contracted a virulent blood disorder and died in 24 hours. All in 1 week. And then add to that another family, not in that particular group, but another family in this church, another young family, had a stillbirth. Pastor Jeff said that it was the worst week of his ministry, doing 3 funerals all in 1 week. Now, I can imagine that awkward space in the kitchen, shimmied in between the refrigerator on one side and the stove on the other side and backed up by the island, became not just a place where you made food, but it became a sacred space. A space where Christians gathered together, followers of Jesus gathered together to search the scriptures, to pray, to do Bible study, to ask the hard questions in life. Why would God let this happen to us? Haven't we been faithful? God, do you care about us? What kind of God are you? Are we in the story of Job right now? And in the midst of asking those hard questions, they stuck together to be in the mess of life together, seeking God's grace, seeking God's direction, seeking God's love. So why do we meet in this kitchen space downstairs when I show up here a couple months ago? Well, it's because it's more than a kitchen. It's become a sacred space. But it was not always so. At one point, it was just a kitchen. It became a sacred space over time. You see, the change honored the mothers and fathers of Asbury United Methodist Church as they honored the younger couples by taking the awkward space in the building. Now, when Michigan Avenue Methodist Episcopal Church, which then became Michigan Avenue Methodist Church, made the momentous decision to move from Michigan Avenue up to this new suburb of Groesbeck, which sat across the street from a farmland, when they decided to make that move, they were doing so to take on the same mission that they lived out on Michigan Avenue in a new place, in a new mission field. Much care was taken in that move to honor the mothers and fathers of Michigan Avenue Methodist Episcopal Church. Much care was taken to honor them, and that included putting this cornerstone out here. The memory of the cornerstone is kept in the front of this building. That cornerstone was originally laid by Bishop Quayle on August 1st of 1910, and it still resides right outside the front doors. The first service then in this building was Thursday, April 11th, 1968, which was the Thursday before Easter. What Thursday is that? Maundy Thursday, right? It's appropriate that the first service of Asbury United Methodist Church was on Maundy Thursday, the day that we get the commandment from Jesus to do what? Serve each other's, right? It's in the DNA of this church from the very first service that this is going to be a place that serves. Now, I did some historical research to learn about all of these things, and I found a DS report, Jerry, a district superintendent report from 1911. I got a little help from the Michigan Historical Society for this. And here's what your equivalent, Jerry, says back in 1911. He says, in the last report, I announced the organization of Michigan Avenue Church in Lansing. This year, I am pleased to tell you that a new church building will cost, when completed, $25,000. Wouldn't it be nice if we could build a whole building with $25,000? It's in the process of construction. The cornerstone was laid by Bishop Quayle August 1st, and Brother C.J. Cruz, the pastor, by Episcopal appointment, on going to his charge last October, found a membership of 66 people. 66. This year, he reports 170. The Sunday school, organized with an attendance of 46, has grown with an enrollment of 240. And Epworth and a junior league have also been organized, and the church in all departments is growing rapidly. This remarkable showing is due to the ability and tireless energy of the pastor and the large faith and faithful work of a loyal people. A pastor and lay people working together. Now, also to honor those mothers and fathers of Michigan Avenue, the organ from Michigan Avenue was meticulously dismantled and kept in the basement of a members' church before this building was finished and installed here. This was to honor those mothers and fathers of the Michigan Avenue Methodist Church. But honoring your mother and father, any of us who have tried to do that, know it can get complicated, right? It can get very complicated. Eventually, the decision was made to remove the pipe organs and replace it with an electric organ. To do mission to a new ministry, to a new generation, a new group of people. And that decision, I'm sure, was not taken lightly, but it was a way of honoring the mothers and fathers of Michigan Avenue Church by staying with the mission, even though it had a new form. That mission being to make more disciples of Jesus Christ, to transform the world. Once again, mom and dad took the awkward place in the kitchen for the sake of what the kids needed. Now today, we are continuing in a series, besides celebrating Asbury United Methodist Church, we're continuing in a series on the 10 Commandments. And if you haven't guessed it yet, the commandment we're looking at today is the 5th commandment, to honor your father and mother. Now let me tell you, friends, we planned this series a year ago, not knowing that on this day that we were going to be talking about honoring mothers and fathers, that we would be doing this celebration service with Asbury United Methodist Church. But it is perfectly appropriate that we study this commandment today as we honor the mothers and fathers of Asbury UMC and Michigan Avenue. But honoring your father and mother can be really complicated. Anybody who's taking care of an aging parent knows the challenge of honoring your parent while trying to help them make difficult decisions. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. This is my dad, and when I was, 2 years old or so. And in 2012, 6 years before he died, he was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. It's a kind of Parkinson's-like disease. His primary caregiver at the time was my stepmom. But in 2017, my stepmom was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and told she had 6 to 9 months to live. In January of 2018, my stepmom died. And then later that year in September, my dad died. Late in 2017, my stepmom called me and she said, "Can you take your dad for a week? I can't take care of everything that I need to take care of to help him after I die. I can't take care of the house and help him. I can't take care of myself and help him as well. Will you take him for a week?" And what do you do when your stepmom calls you and asks you to take your dad who has dementia for a week? You say, "Yeah, okay." So I drove down to Indianapolis and drove him back. And I got an up-close and personal picture of the challenges that my stepmom had. You see, my dad struggled with hallucinations. He struggled with paranoia. He struggled with surviving as a diabetic on Pepsi and Snickers bars. He was spending money, running up debt. He was driving around and getting lost. He was laying in bed most of the day. And he kept a shotgun underneath the bed as his insurance that we wouldn't put him in a nursing home. What he didn't know is that my uncle had taken the firing pin out of that shotgun when he wasn't around. Now, my stepmom needed to become his legal guardian, but that required a letter from his doctor to the court to be able to do that. And that required a recommendation from his family members to the doctor for that. So while my dad was at my house for that week, and I saw up front all of the challenges that he had, I wrote a letter of recommendation to my dad's doctor that my stepmom be given guardianship over him. When I took him back home, I gave that letter to my stepmom. She put it in her purse, and my dad found it. He came barging in, and he disowned me. Or maybe his dementia disowned me. You see, honoring your mother and father can be very complicated. We're continuing in, again, this series of the 10 Commandments. We're encouraging you all to memorize those 10 Commandments. Today, it's honor your father and mother. Would you just say that with me? Honor your father and mother. Let's memorize these commandments together. We've got them on a bookmark. You can find that bookmark at sycamorecreekchurch.org/10 Commandments, or I believe there was one that was put in your program when you came in today. The question we've been saying is, are these burdensome rules or are they life-giving principles? And we think that they're guardrails to the good and the beautiful life that God has for us. The fifth commandment starts to talk about how we interact with other people. The first 4 commandments are about how we interact with God. And today it's appropriate to look at how do we interact with each other. It's like going back to the basics. Honor your father and mother, the commandment says. And then it says an interesting sort of addendum, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Now, today we're here because several months ago, back last year, these 2 churches voted for Sycamore Creek to adopt Asbury United Methodist Church. And so today we're asking, how do we honor the mothers and fathers of Asbury UMC? And I think one of the ways that we honor is we say thank you. And so I can honor some people here at Asbury. Let me just take a moment and thank some very specific people, particularly the leadership team of Asbury. Judy and Dawn and Deb and Carol, thank you. The hours you have put in, we honor you today. We wouldn't be here today without your tireless work. The Bruces, Bruce McCrae and Bruce Newman, the two of you and your help with the finances and the endowment, thank you. We honor you today. Pastor John and Diane and your family, you have been so humble in this transition. Thank you. We honor you. We honor you, Jalen, today. Thank you. Allie Watson, who has just worked tirelessly with me as the secretary. Thank you, Allie. We honor you today. We honor you. And then one that's really close to my heart, Cindy Jubeck and Lori Homer, for making my kids feel welcome at First Town Hall. Thank you. We honor you today. We honor you. We honor you as the spiritual mothers and fathers of Asbury United Methodist Church. And we honor all of those who are members for the ways you've opened your heart to me. You've come to an open house. You've come to town halls. You've welcomed my kids. We honor you today. Thank you. Because of your hard work, today's not a funeral service, is it? It's a resurrection service. It's a service where we celebrate the past and look for the new thing that God is doing in us. And today's message is kind of a weird message. It's like something I've never preached before. It's like a eulogy where we're saying good words and we're honoring the past. But it's also a sermon on the fifth commandment of the 10 Commandments and a casting of vision into the future. So let's take just a minute and let's look a little deeper at that fifth commandment. The word honor here does all of the heavy lifting because the word honor is Hebrew's kavod. Doesn't that sound heavy? Kavod. Say it with me. Kavod. Kavod literally means heavy. It's significant. It's weighty. Treat your parents as though they were significant is what this commandment is saying because they are. Pay attention to them. Kavod them. Say that with me again. Kavod. All right, so that's kavod. Then the opposite of respect is disrespect, which is kala, which means lightly. Doesn't that sound light? Say that with me. Kala. Kala. Kavod. Kala. We don't treat our mothers and fathers lightly. We treat them with kavod, as though they were significant. In fact, the Bible takes this really seriously. The book of Deuteronomy says, cursed is anyone who belittles their father or mother. And elsewhere in the Bible, it says, listen, a regularly belligerent child gets the death penalty. Now, how many parents haven't wanted to do that? Thankfully, not many of them have acted on it. And I doubt they did back then either. As a teenager, yes, that's me in my senior picture. Thanks for your laughter. That makes me feel real good. As a teenager, you struggle to honor your parents, right? And I really struggled as a teenager to honor my father. I had unrealistic expectations of him. He didn't do what I wanted him to do. He wasn't the kind of dad I wanted him to be. He was never doing the kinds of things that I wanted him to do or to be. And when I became a parent, I began to understand more. I began to show my dad and my mom more mercy. I became more merciful towards their mistakes. This is 4 generations, me, my dad, my grandpa, my great-grandfather, and the mistake are those curtains that are behind them. And I saw with clearer vision when I became a parent his strengths. When I went off to college, I did a year of counseling just on my relationship with my dad. And my dad came with me one weekend and spent a whole weekend with me in counseling. And out of that weekend came a repairing of our relationship. You know who had to do most of the changing in that? I had unrealistic expectations. And when I let go of those, I started to have a relationship with the dad who my dad actually was. I began to see the beauty in who he was. Now, there's a parallel dynamic at work here in this adoption. The church that is only 22 years old is moving in with the parents of the faith. And they're moving in to mom and dad's home, and they're getting ready to remodel it. And we listen to different music, and we watch different TV shows, and we eat different food, and we paint the walls different colors, and we like different art. And all of these things happen. And sometimes we don't even watch shows in the same room. We watch them on little devices in separate rooms together, away. We're family and we share a lot, but we also have different ways of expressing the same values. And like the Christian Family Forum in the kitchen, the parents are taking the awkward space for the sake of the younger ones and for the sake of the mission. So over this next year, here's what we're doing today. We're celebrating life. We're going to have a brief service outside at the sign in the cornerstone. Then we're going to have a luncheon. And after the luncheon in the fellowship hall, we're going to do what's the hardest part of this adoption. We're going to shut the building down. We're going to close it except to community groups. And we're going to begin to remodel it. And actually, if you go down in the hall, outside of the fellowship hall, we've got some renderings of what the remodeling might look like. We hope you go down and take a look at that. And Thomas Oates will be there kind of answering any questions you may have. Now, admittedly, this is the hardest part of this whole thing for folks from Asbury. I have heard it over and over again. So let me take a moment to say again why we are doing this. We're doing it for the sake of the mission of Jesus. Because there are some things we need to let go of about how we live in this building so that we can grasp on to something new. Something has to die in order for something to be resurrected. And one of the culture pieces of Sycamore Creek is that we don't really meet in the building for our small groups. We meet out in the community. And why do we meet out in the community? To make new friends. That's where the people are. To get out of the castle of the four walls of the church and into the community to make new friends for the mission of Jesus. That's the culture of Sycamore Creek. To build a thriving and growing mission of Jesus to a new generation, a more diverse generation, a younger generation, to reach more people, to make more disciples, to transform the world. You're getting a vision of it here this morning, right? Like, look around, take a mental snapshot of this building full. You've seen it before. We heard that in the joys, right, from the past. And it's our hope that we'll see it again in the future. But we only see it if we first get outside of the building. To do what? To make new friends. Make new friends. So here's what's going to happen. In August, Asbury United Methodist Church are going to carpool to our Potterville campus together. Asbury's going to go together as a group to Potterville. And then in September, they're going to carpool to our South Lansing campus together. And in October, it's you choose at that point. As individuals, for this next year, which campus are you going to attend? It's your choice. And then in January, February, this actually doesn't even last the whole year. In January and February, we're going to put together a launch team to relaunch this building as a new campus of Sycamore Creek and Eastwood campus. And we're going to do that with people from Asbury, people with Sycamore Creek, and new people from the community. We're going to train, we're going to canvass the neighborhood, we're going to network, we're going to outreach. We're going to plant a new church here. A new church here. And then the point of all this, again, is what? to make new friends for the sake of the mission of Jesus. On Easter, we're going to hold a community service. Probably not in the building. It's not going to be remodeled yet. It may be out in the community somewhere. We're going to hold a community Easter service. And in May through September, we're going to do preview services once a month. And then in October, we're going to launch weekly. And in the middle, we're going to train, we're going to canvas, we're going to network, we're going to outreach. What's the reason for doing that? To make new friends, right? For the mission and the sake of Jesus, to make new friends, so that the mothers and fathers of Asbury United Methodist Church would see their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren come to know and love and serve Jesus, to have faith ignited or reignited in their life. That's why we're doing this, friends. That's why we're doing this. So how do we honor our mothers and fathers in faith during the midst of this adoption? Especially during this adoption. What do our parents need to hear from us? What do they need to know from us? Adam Hamilton, who first preached this message on this commandment, is the pastor of the largest United Methodist Church in the United States in Kansas City. And he had a list of 4 things that he said our parents need to hear from us. So if you've got a parent, here's what your parents need to hear from you. If you're part of Sycamore Creek, here's what the mothers and fathers of Asbury need to hear from us. They need to hear thank you. They need to hear, I love you. You matter to me. Do you want to hang out? That's what our parents need to hear from us, right? And I think all of these speak to a kind of existential anxiety that parents have, that I'm now having myself as a parent. In that it's asking the question, does all of that time and energy that I spent on you when you were a little kid, does that matter at all? Does that mean anything? Is it significant? Is it weighty? Is it kavod? Keeping you alive when you were a toddler? Walking through your elementary years and your teenage... Do you care to have a relationship with me again? Am I significant to you? Now, Adam Hamilton had this list of the 4 things that your parents need to hear from you. He didn't have a list of what the kids need to hear from the parents. And so I've got my own list of 4 things that I think kids need to hear from parents, and particularly the folks from Sycamore Creek need to hear from the mothers and fathers of Asbury United Methodist Church. And okay, let me just take total ownership. This is what I need to hear as your pastor, okay? Like, I'm just going to not be Freudian about this. Like, this is just my list, and maybe people from Sycamore Creek need to hear this too. We need to hear that we love you as well. I need you to say, I love you, Pastor Tom. We support you. Yes, you can make that change. And we'll let you make mistakes. And we won't abandon you. That's what I need to hear as your pastor. That's what I need to hear. Pastor Deb Johnson was pastor here for 11 years. She's the longest running pastor here, and she's the only female pastor. You were here from 97, that was the year I got married, to 2008, that was the year I graduated from seminary. And you told me something that I have a hard time believing this, but I'm gonna trust you because you're a pastor. You said that Asbury United Methodist Church was great at leadership transition. In fact, friends, she told me she never had to do any leadership training here because the committees and the teams just all did it. They passed it on to the next generation. They weren't territorial when it came to doing ministry and mission here. They brought the next generation on, and they passed it on to them. They let them make mistakes, and they didn't abandon them. There was a safety net under there. I'm not kidding, right? You really told me this, right? Like, yes. That is an amazing legacy. Asbury United Methodist Church, you have done this before. You have done this. God has already been at work here. It's once again the mothers and fathers saying, we'll take the kitchen so you can have the comfortable spot. And when we do this sort of honoring, the Spirit shows up in surprising ways. I had this happen with my own dad. The way the Spirit moved was in an exceedingly surprising way, a way that I never would have imagined. You see, I told you that my dad found that letter that I wrote to his doctor supporting my stepmom's guardianship of him. And he confronted me and my stepmom on the back porch. And my anger flared, his anger flared. We went face to face. Now, he had dementia to blame. What did I have to blame? Not much. And in the midst of this, we faced off on the back porch. After his death, I wrote a poem that described what happened on that day. Heat exploded from Dad's mouth, 6 inches from my face, like the backyard grill left on too long before the spark ignites, singes past my eyebrows, burning deep into my soul. Moments before, I stood my ground like I was a teen again, staring at Dad's silhouette at the top of the basement stairs and the sound of him demanding I return to the kitchen after walking away from a disagreement. My resolve dissolved. When I was 15, he wasn't mean, just raised his voice. At 44, he needed more. He went for the jugular, and the blood we shared spilled on the floor between us, an offering to the God of his paranoia. I deserted my childhood home in a haze, driving away from Indy, a disgraced, disoriented, disqualified driver, crying for hours, abandoned, alone. Countless hours of talking, years of therapy, working on being the best son I could become, come to realize it was mostly my own damn distortions that needed undoing, not Dad. All forsaken, gone. That was the day Dad's dementia disowned me. But the next day, my stepmom called a second time, telling me the letter I drafted supporting her guardianship, the same letter Dad discovered that had dispatched my own disowning, echoed within Dad's demented brain all night long, without cessation, like a hallucination, narration, dictation, quotation, oration, negation, palpitation he couldn't shake. But real, somehow dissipating the paranoia. He comes up for breath. My real dad, not the demented one, self-aware, realizes he doesn't want to be the man he reads about in the letters on the page, doesn't want to disown his own soul or his son, freely, willingly, hands over what he had been withholding for months. Wallet, driver's license, credit card, cash, keys, his freedom. All for the price of the loss of paradise on the worst day of my life, being disowned by my dad's dementia. You see, the worst day of my life turned out to be the very thing that God used for me to care for my dad when he couldn't see it. So, Dad, thank you. I love you. You matter to me. Do you want to hang out? Asbury United Methodist, thank you. I love you. You matter to me. Do you want to hang out? May our days be long in the land that the Lord our God is giving us. And all who agreed said, Amen.